So, John, you want to introduce this conversation? Or?
Well, what we're thinking, driving through the rain today. So we've been working on our disability rights campaign with the Disability Rights Group, which has been great. As Tom Page, our great leader, points out, it's a rights-based group, rights-based campaign, trying to get economic rights for us to be able to get the money that we deem livable, which is obviously more than 906. And then there's other smaller things around around getting people, making it the benefits accessible for people, and then getting away from things like clawbacks, so they're clawing back on different things when you go and work. But I think the clawbacks aren't as focused as just trying to raise the rates, as they say. Then the other parts we're getting at, Tom has been working on trying to get like this peer-to-peer advocacy going. So Tom got Noel off of welfare and onto disability, which is an extra $300 a month. Tom is great at that, and I think that we can expand that. We got a grant in with the city, trying to get the city to pay for us to have workshops to get our members all trained up on how to be leaders like that. And then Wade's got just experience, like, you know, around this kind of stuff. So we want to kick their butts, but it kind of gets us back into the same scenario where we're just going to the Liberals and saying, yeah, we need you to do this, and then we go to the NDP going, please do it, it's the right thing to do, and then that's kind of where we're at. I think we kind of need more than that, and Wade's got some
Well, I've got some stories to share, so
yeah.
They may or may not be applicable, because clearly this is partly has to do with how the welfare system used to work in another country, which is the United States. The key is what we would do in welfare rights is we would organize around, you have to have organizing tools, you have to have campaigns no matter what the organization you're building. So we were trying to, in the National Welfare Rights Organization, advance the sense of entitlement for welfare recipients to actually not be ashamed of those benefits, but, you know, get what they needed to be able to support themselves and their families. Largely, mothers with, single mothers with children was the big, so disability benefits, or what they used to call unemployment relief or general relief in the U.S. almost doesn't exist at all. So, you know, for men who can't work, they're either getting unemployment because they used to work, or they're, you know, stuck like Chuck. There's just nothing for them. Back then, there used to be some kinds of benefits in some states. So I don't know how much of your welfare system is provincially based and how much is state-based.
It's all provincial.
So that's fine. So here's how you construct these campaigns. These would be what we would call special needs campaigns. And what we would find out, literally by listening to recipients of benefits, whether it's disability or seniors or mothers with children. We're on Aid for Children, Aid for Dependent Children, AFDC, was a big program until the 90s in the U.S. We would find out particularly if there were any emergency benefits that they'd ever received. Maybe, you know, the heat had gone out and they got some assistance to pay for the heat. Maybe there'd been a problem paying their rent and they'd gotten some help on rent. Maybe, in fact, they moved into a place and had no furniture, no bed for the kids or whatever, and the welfare had given them, you know, $50 here, $100 there, maybe a voucher, you know, whatever. Maybe they were kicked out of a house, some, you know, bum of an old man, they're out there with 3 kids, they got a check to get, you know, sheets and blankets and pillows and stuff. So, the welfare system being a welfare system, this is almost always the case, that there's a little, no matter what the rules are, there's almost always a little wiggle room out there, because they're in the business of dealing with people with real problems, real issues. We would create a form, all that information. Marcos tells me he, you know, got a bed 2 months ago because he was in that situation. Zoe tells me she got, you know, kitchen chairs because there was no place to sit there, there was no table in the kitchen. John got a sofa bed, you know, whatever. We would make a form, special needs form. This was all a form-based campaign in which there would be a listing of all the items we'd ever heard, furniture, household supplies, or in other cases, clothing, school clothing, winter clothing, it may have been the situation. Depending on the campaign, the special needs campaign, we'd have it designed a form where when we're out talking to recipients of the aid, you'd literally be asking people, hey, you know, you felt like sometimes you were a furniture salesman. Hey, Wade Rathke, you know, I'm with Massachusetts Welfare Rights Organization. Do you have a chair for every child in your house? Do you have 4 sheets for a bed? Do you have? And they'd look at you like you're crazy. But you got in the door pretty damn quick, and you'd walk in the door and say, I don't see any couch, I don't see a chair for everybody, you know. You'd all of a sudden be talking about what was on the form. Well, of course, they think you're crazy. What are you talking about? Well, this is, you know, what we're establishing, because if you get it for one, you should be able to get it for all. If Marco's got what he needed, why wouldn't Zoe be able to get the same thing? This is not a discretionary program. This is a state-based, provincial-based aid program, and if you need it, you should be able to get it. And the key legal underpinning here in the United States, and I suspect there's something very similar here, is the amendment in the Constitution that provides equal protection, that in fact says you have to be treated the same. You can't be treated differently if you're living in the state of Massachusetts, United States, British Columbia, whatever. Is that the case here? Is there anything that says that you can be?
I don't know off the top
It's
of my head.
definitely worth looking into that. I don't know off the top of my head either.
I'd be shocked if there wasn't some sort of what we call equal protection.
Yeah. Yeah, there's equality clauses in the Constitution, but like...
It's the equality clause?
Yeah.
Well, that's probably exactly the same thing, probably the equality clause. So you're structuring a campaign around the equality clause. If I needed a couch just like Marcos got a couch, how did he get a couch? And I can't get a couch when I need a couch. And essentially, you're getting people to fill out these forms, come to the meetings, they have to fill out the form. You don't let people fill out the forms on the doors. They have to come in, sign up for the organization, fill out the forms in the meeting. And the forms can't be given in until you actually go to the welfare office. This is the way the campaigns will be structured, and turn in the forms en masse. So if you follow me, all of a sudden, within weeks of the organizing drive, you're going in with hundreds of people to demand we all want this, whether it's special needs clothes or winter coats for children, or you know, whatever it might have been. Now, almost the biggest disaster I ever got involved in, the first campaign I ever did starting ACORN in Arkansas, was I read the welfare manual. And if you're going to be involved in these kind of campaigns, you've got to read the manuals. I don't know if you have, I'm sure you must have. Whether the disability or welfare manual is here in BC. So I read the manual, and you know, my reading of it is that there was not only that there was a small emergency budget, and my reading of the budget was that that emergency budget, which is out of what you could have funded this kind of special needs campaign, was $4 million. So essentially, by driving people, I then hit the welfare office in the state capitol 5 straight days. Each day with more people from more groups. This is the very beginning, first campaign of ACORN. That summer, August of 1970. So it's like a wave, you know, it's in the papers. First there are 100 people, then there are 300 people, and then, you know, it's all this groups, and there's whites, and there's all of them demanding they wanted these benefits from the welfare system. Based on this language that was in what we had on the forms, this language I found on the in the welfare manual. Well, it turns out once we got to negotiations, oh, I'm like, you're hanging me. I misread the figure. It was actually 400,000, not 4 million. So I could have, you know, been starting the whole organization of ACORN and, you know, pissing on my own shoe. You know, basically I could have lost the campaign. So that sometimes I'm asked, did you ever, you know, any mistakes you ever learned, you know, trying to organize it? Well, better read those, you know, measure twice before cutting that campaign on a little bit of budget work there, a little organizing math. But we just bogarted our way through it, you know. No, there's no 4 million, there's hardly 400,000. 400,000, 4 million, the point is, it's equal protection. If you've got it, everybody needs to get it. You figure out the way. I'm not gonna run the welfare system. You know, this is people demanding that they need to be cut within a certain way. It's not my responsibility to fund the welfare system. That's why you're the governor. We met with, the governor was Winthrop Rockefeller. So we're negotiating his office, you know, he's got these cowboy boots that say WR on the back. And, you know, my name's Rathke, so I offer trading boots. I have a be up there, you know, about a pair of those boots, you know, same initials. Didn't get the boots, but we did get, you know, that campaign was about furniture, so we did, in fact, win a Furniture for Families campaign. And within the, however they financed it, they actually set up a warehouse where, you know, we delivered people and they were able to just pick their stuff. Now in Massachusetts, when we were winning, and this is what was such a you know, aha moment to me in understanding that it was crazy that we were only collecting in welfare rights $1 a year in dues. That was our dues system, which meant you didn't collect it at all. I mean, somebody threw a $1 in the pot, oh, okay, we'll say that they pay dues. But when the big breakthrough as an organizer in welfare rights, I didn't know anything. I was 20 years old. I didn't know how they did these campaigns anywhere else. So after we turned in the forms, what I would do is say, we're going to be back in 2 weeks to collect the checks. We're all coming back to collect the checks. It was a pickup day. You know, they didn't agree to give it, but we, you know, we were coming back with 3 times that amount of money. We were turning them forms, and we were just going to, you know, bum rush the welfare office because we wanted our check. Well, damned if they didn't have the check ready. So it's chaos, you can imagine. Hundreds and hundreds in Springfield, Massachusetts, of welfare recipients there to collect their checks. And the fools actually let me hand out the checks. So there was this classic picture of me as a kid standing on top of a table, you know, helping hand out the checks. And the checks were wild. They got vouchers for furniture and checks for household supplies. So if you needed a couch, chairs, whatever, you might be getting a voucher to go pick up that stuff for $500, $800, $1,200, and you might be getting a check made out to you for $1,000, $1,500 in household supplies. All this shit. I don't know if any household supplies really bought, but you know, I'm sure furniture was bought because it was a voucher, but people are walking away from there with some people with checks for thousands, checks and vouchers worth thousands of dollars, and you're not even collecting $1 for dues. And people were just sky high, and you know, God, they just, next they wanted school clothing, next they wanted winter clothing, and, you know. It was finally when they decided to demand winter coats for adults, and, no, that was it. The whole riot broke out October 15, 1969 in Springfield. But that's another story. But the point of the campaign is, anytime you have a precedent, and this is all rights-based, needs-based campaigns are based on establishing a clear precedent where they've done something from a state, or in this case a provincial authority before. Because on the basis of that, and whatever this, you know, hopefully legal basis is of the Equality Amendment and rights and charters, or whatever it is, you've got something where you can base a campaign to try to push the envelope. Now, what happened in Massachusetts? So we use this as an organizing tool everywhere in Massachusetts. We won gazillions and billions of dollars worth of these benefits because the welfare system wasn't doing any kind of job to get benefits like this out. It was all based on if we demanded it in this office or that office of welfare, you know, where welfare rights was organizing. So what the governor then did, seeing all the special needs costs going up, was propose a flat grant. That he would raise all benefits for all families on welfare and abolish special needs, arguing that it would be more equitable and cheaper for him. Well, it also, you know, since that had been the organizing tool building welfare rights, would take away the key organizing tool that we'd use to build what was the largest of all the organizations in the National Welfare Rights Organization. We had 5,000 members. The next biggest probably had 1,500 or something like that. So it eliminated the organizing tool. So we fought like, you know, tigers against the flat grant. I mean, I can't tell you how many actions I had to do to try to stop the flat grant system, but in some ways it was crazy. We were fighting against something that was going to raise the benefits for all welfare recipients in the state of Massachusetts. And it wouldn't have been, you know, we argued like adequate income, it wasn't, you know, as much money, but you were winning, you know, a huge citizen wealth campaign, even by losing the organizing tool. So, you know, it seemed terrible at the time, and all the lessons I learned from that are, you know, I took to start ACORN, so I would do a better job. But in retrospect, it wasn't, you know, by driving special needs, which is in some ways the problem you have, is another way of going around with the question of level of benefits. So there's no community, no, other than, you know, I was there in Korea, in Seoul, to help keynote the Seoul International Welfare Conference. It was all of a sudden in Korea. My buddy Mark was here. Done time in Korea, didn't John?
No.
Huh?
Cool. I didn't know.
Hey, that's
Marcos
why
has
I
been
come
around
to
so
town.
much.
That's why I come to town. Let you know a little bit about your troops here. But the long and short of it is, Korea was, you know, one of the flying tigers. It was all about the economy. All of a sudden, you know, it turns out that just, you know, balls to the wall for, you know, building cars and trucks and whatever wasn't enough. So when the economy declined, they had no real social welfare system. So what's been a political issue for the last number of years in Korea is how to not catch up and have a real social welfare system. So it's one of the few countries in the freaking world now that actually cares about a welfare benefits, social welfare projects, social enterprise developments, because they're trying to figure out how to catch up and have a soft side of the economy as well as the hard production side that they specialized in. But anyway, this is, you know, in looking outside of Korea, almost nobody wants to, and even in Korea, because they're broke as a joke now, nobody wants to talk about raising benefits. So actual cost levels, dealing with inflation realistically, I mean, that's like a, you know, very difficult campaign that we're involved in here. But to solve a crisis in the welfare system, which is how we approached it in welfare rights, by pushing whatever organizing handles, you know, rights that are not, you know, distributed equitably in terms of entitlements, we could find in the manuals. You could create the political pressure and the street pressure. I mean, in the year I ran mass welfare rights, we had something like, you know, 478 arrests. For, you know, you go into those offices, we wouldn't leave until we got the benefits. Well, that creates a problem. I mean, sometimes we left with their help. Sometimes we left on our own steam. But people were, you know, they were going in there and duking it out because they wanted those benefits. And in most cases, we ended up going from nothing in Boston, which is where they started this sort of effort, to, you know, where I could win in Springfield, checks for, you know, hundreds and thousands of dollars in checks and balances, until it essentially broke the system and created a flat grant system, which welfare rights was arguing, it's a little bit like our living wage campaign. We were arguing that adequate income for a family of four was $5,500 nationally. Well, in 1970, 1969, that was, it doesn't sound like much today, but that was huge money then, because that was, you know, minimum wage was $1.65 or something in the U.S. at that point. So that would have been on the equivalency of, you know, before inflation, that was big time money. But what they were giving us in Massachusetts on flat grant was only like $3,200, $3,500 after, you know, a lot of lobbying and compromise. So it seemed, you know, sparse compared to what we thought was our, you know, national goals. Well, it's still the best anybody ever wanted. John?
So we had the first campaign we did with the disability rights group was around the community volunteer supplement and about how some of our members were able to come in and volunteer at a food bank or at the ACORN office and get an extra $100 a month, and how then the government, when people, then there was just a waiting list. They capped the amount of funding they would do. And then we started going there and doing actions and picketing and stuff like that. And in the end, and we didn't know, we weren't thinking about equal access, which is retrospect maybe something. But what they say is it's capped. You're on a waiting list, so no, you're not getting it. And then they eventually said everyone who's on the waiting list will get it, but we're just ending the program. So now, Canada, Deborah, Chris Curson, there's several members who come in here and volunteer and get an extra $100 a month on their checks, and people like Tom.
So they ended the program, but they didn't end the program. They just red circled everybody who was getting it.
Right. So then we were kind of doing the same thing in some way.
Well, these are what are called entitlement campaigns, right? So what they tried to do was say there wasn't an entitlement, there was a cap.
Yeah.
You know, obviously our argument is that where you cap out these programs, there's an inherent inequity if you put a cap on it. I mean, so what does determine some discretion of a caseworker, whether or not somebody gets it or not? So, but entitlement programs, and this has been the pushback for the last number of decades, can be very expensive. That's what Social Security is in the U.S. That's what your health care benefits are in Canada. That's what food stamps still is in the U.S. There are very few entitlement programs left. But part of our job is how to create entitlement programs. I mean, there must still be some. I mean, if you need a wheelchair, do they get you one?
Zoe probably knows more about this stuff.
Okay, Zoe?
I'm not sure about some of the things like wheelchairs. I think they have a certain amount they probably give you for a lot of things, but maybe not the full amount.
Well, what about so I know that if you're in need and your doctor says, what they did in Ontario, what OCAP did in Ontario, was that they got the special diet and they got if your doctor says you need more money to be able to eat, live, and you need a more nutritious food, you need more money for food, then you can apply for the special diet, they give you an extra